What is going on? I want to welcome you from AFCOR for today, Monday, September 12th, 2022. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff Iafrady. And Jeff, it is a beautiful day to record a video after watching a Lions game, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it was. We were downtown for everybody watching right now, especially in Detroit. Come hang out with us at Brass Rail because we were down there, and I got to say, Sean, some of the fan reactions. It makes me even more excited for the Pistons season because
Mm-hmm.
people go from the all time high to all time low back to all time high.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
amazing. It's amazing to witness.
You can literally feel the 7 stages of grief in the midst of 3 hours. And
Yeah,
that's part of what's incredible about a given Sunday. But Jeff, to your point, with the bringing with that time of football season coming around, that means that basketball is that much closer. As of today, we are 2 weeks away from when players start reporting to training camp and when media day begins. And with that, we'll actually start to have some things to talk about because around this time of year, Jeff, there's a pretty long running tradition. And that long running tradition is that people just like to open their mouths and say some dumb shit on things that they don't even know what they're talking about. And who specifically might I be referencing today, Jeff?
it's not a
That would
surprise.
be that would be Stephen A. Smith. Now, for those of you clicking on the video thinking this is going to be like a Stephen A. Smith like bashing session, that's not what this is. Jeff, you and I both respect Stephen A. Smith. I mean, listen, he's at the top of the game, top of his game for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Jeff, he does know,
Money.
yeah, and he does know the game of basketball. But Jeff, what's the problem with being in that type of position where you have to have an opinion on everything? Some things are going to slip through the cracks. And specifically here we got one that's pretty bad. Pretty bad.
Yeah, and this kind of we've had this discussion before too, especially on the Cade Rookie of the Year race. That like especially national media, they have to spend time focusing on the teams that are winning, the teams that are good. And it's clear Stephen A. has not been around Detroit. I mean, look at what we've done probably since around '04 is when the media's really came to Detroit and Stephen A. was visiting Detroit often. But you could just tell like that statement. Listen, and I respect Stephen A because he even said it, at another point, which I agree with the other point he made, which was, listen, I don't come to Detroit because you guys aren't winning anything. Like, start winning stuff
Yeah.
and I'll be here. Like, okay, I respect that. But
Yeah.
then to comment on Cade and who he is as a player and what you've seen out of him, like, that's you're walking on eggshells because it's clear Stephen A doesn't watch Cade Cunningham. I'm sure he's seen highlights. I'm sure he's had to talk about him at times, analyzing the Rookie of the Year race and all this stuff. But like, dude, the comments, and we'll get into it, but
Yeah.
his job to cover national media and to cover all sports, like that stuff comes back to bite you when you try to speak on something you don't know. I would have respected Stephen A more if he would have just said, I didn't watch a lot of Cade. He seems to be on the right track. He seems to be a great player. Detroit loves him. Like, he went the complete opposite way and tried to
Right.
nitpick something he didn't know about. And
Yeah.
that's where I have an issue with.
Yeah, exactly. And at a certain point, you can tell when someone doesn't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? It's kind of a self-report in this case. Stephen A. Smith just kind of had a pretty freaking blatant one. I mean, to your point, he did talk about his love for the city. Stephen A. Smith did say, "I've always loved the city. It's just that your team stinks. That's not my fault." Which, listen, that's fair, man. You can't
Fair.
you can't you
Fair.
can't say otherwise. We historically over the past decade have been the worst city in America as far as like sports records and like franchise success. But we very much are on the up and up, partially because we have a guy like Cade Cunningham and a lot of things that have been coming out of late. A lot of I even heard Kendrick Perkins say on ESPN last week that Evan Mobley should have been the number 1 overall pick in the draft again, which every time I hear that, I'm just like, guys, we're really saying this after one season when Cade Cunningham put up better numbers and was actually like the rookie of the year, like should have been the rookie of the year winner. But that's a whole other conversation. We've had that conversation plenty of times. But this is what we're here to talk about today, Jeff. This bull take from Stephen A. Smith. And it comes from when he was in Detroit earlier this week, specifically on Friday, doing First Take. And he said on Cade Cunningham, he's got skill. He's still got to improve his shot. I think he's still got to improve that motor because the game is faster. The athletes are better, but he clearly belongs in this league. Now,
Uh,
here's the thing, Jeff. I remember the first time I heard Stephen A. Smith's take on Cade Cunningham and on who he was as a player. I remember the first time he brought up this motor concern of Cade's that he has. And so I actually, throughout this last year, used that as a point of emphasis to watch Cade's game, evaluate his motor, see where he actually stands in that department. Because I don't know about you, Jeff, but if someone makes that type of claim,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look into it.
Absolutely.
And one of the first things that I noticed about Cade Cunningham was just how false that was. Because when I watch this guy play, literally the first thing that pops out about Cade Cunningham is his motor and his work ethic, the way that he plays the game. Now, sure, you could if he's talking about, Cade having to adjust to the speed of the game and having to adjust to what the NBA game is like, I understand that. But Jeff, here's one problem with that argument. What was one of Cade's big weaknesses this last year? I would say personal fouls, fouling too much. And what's something that you're doing if you're fouling too much, Jeff? You're perhaps going too hard on the defensive end. So, Jeff, what was your first gut reaction when you read that quote? Because I know I had to do a double take and go, are you freaking kidding me?
That was the giveaway for me, because I was working at Woodward last year during last year's draft. And I just remember looking at Cade. That was the biggest thing for him coming out of Oklahoma State was, his motor. And it's because you turn on the film and the guy just looks poised. He just looks, he's not a guy who's erratic. He's not going to be emotionally, you could tell right on the TV screen. He's just cool, calm, and collected. That's why we always call Jaden and Cade, it's like the fire and ice. Cade's always going to be the ice. He's calm in pretty much every single situation. That's why when he shows emotion, you're almost like, wow, Cade, Cade is passionate about, like when he faced Jalen Green and he's over here, you could see emotionally he's more invested. But coming out of the draft, I'm like, this guy, yeah, you could say he doesn't have a motor, but if you watch him on tape, he's clear cut the best player in the draft. Like, I don't know what the motor, and he's playing hard, like you said. It's not like you're watching him and you're like, yeah, he needs to improve his motor. I think it's just the pace he plays. And if you watch him in his rookie year, it's almost like a pace that a player should have, years into the league. It's similar to Luka Doncic. You could say, does Luka have a high motor? Like, I mean, come on, we can look around the league and look at some of these guys. LaMelo Ball, does he have a high motor? Like, Stephen A is probably just relying on a crutch criticism he had from the draft, and he hasn't actually watched tape of Cade to see that it's actually, it benefits him in games. He moves at his pace and he gets to his spots. And as you notice, the thing I agreed with him on is he has to improve his shot, but his pace has gotten him to his spots and he's been very successful at it. So I don't see an issue with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reason why, to me, Jeff, that this one sticks out so glaringly when talking about a player's motor is because being a fan of Detroit sports and being a fan of the Pistons in particular, I've gotten my fair share of watching players who we can question their motor. Just to name a couple: Josh Smith, Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, guys who all, came in and had key roles, were given big contracts. And at times we wondered if they were truly putting in the work in and taking that extra step to go to the next level. How many draft picks have we seen that haven't developed or put in the work or panned out the way that we wanted to, right? Whereas the thing that stuck out with Cade is how strikingly different he is to everyone we've brought in. How he's comparable to a guy like Grant Hill, not just because of the intangibles and the talent that he brings when he's playing the game of basketball, but Troy Weaver looks at the person as well. And the number one sentiment that rang from Dwayne Casey, that ran from Troy Weaver, that rang from the entire organization was how they got everything they wanted and more out of Cade Cunningham, not just as the player, but as the person. Dwayne Casey talked about the intelligence and the intangibles and the understanding that Cade had of every position on the court was unlike anything he had seen from a player that age. In addition, if you remember his first action in the NBA against Orlando, his very first game, what's the highlight that sticks out from that game? It's not a dunk. It's not a shot. It's not anything flashy. It was him diving for a loose ball. That was the thing that stuck out from that game, was diving for a loose ball. And Cade talks about all the time how he's not working on his stats. He's not working on getting points per game. He's not out there doing that. Rather, he's looking at how he can get a rebound so he can set up his teammates to be in better position to succeed. So knowing all of that and seeing a guy after all of this time, the resume that he's put forth in just 1 year, and saying that he doesn't have a motor or that he needs to work on it.
And on top of that too, Sean, why would you give a guy with quote unquote, has to work on his motor? Why would you give him the basketball in crunch time? Like the Pistons did pretty much every single game, whether they were in crunch time or not. I can't tell the top of my head if it was pre or post All-Star break, but he was among the lead leaders in points in clutch time. Why would a guy who has a low motor be that deadly towards the end of a ball game? It's because of a guy that has a high motor and can play hard from start to finish. I mean, the motor comment really, to me, says a lot about how much Cade he actually watches. And at the end of the day, I feel like it's just a crutch. Like when he thinks of Cade, he thinks of, okay, I said he had a low motor coming out of the draft. Low motor. He needs to work on that. He probably checks his statistics. You see the efficiency numbers. He has to improve his shot. Those are very basic things. Like we've been reviewing Cade this entire season, this entire offseason, talking about Cade, what he needs to improve on. You can go check that out on either this channel or Woodward Pistons. And it's a lot more than just improve your shot, improve your motor. He looks like he belongs in the league, though. Yeah, clearly he belongs in the league. But
yeah, no shit, he belongs in the league. He was the #1 pick.
Yeah,
and dude, and let's just get into this briefly. It's this whole idea that there needs to be that we need to have a best already, right? That there's this compulsive need that we have to figure out who was the best player from that draft. And it's like, we have to figure that out right away.
We need something to talk about.
Yeah. But again, without looking at the context of the situation that Evan Mobley came into versus the situation that, say, Cade Cunningham came into. There's just things that you just can't simply compare fully. And in addition, these guys haven't even developed into the players that they're going to be yet. And even we're talking about like a guy that doesn't have motor. Have you seen Cade's physical transformation from rookie year to right now? Have we seen how much muscle this guy's added?
It's hard not to have a motor when he's in the gym as much as he is with Ashton.
Exactly. And Jeff, maybe that's perhaps where like you and I are a little bit more blessed in the sense that we are closer to it, in the sense that we are, first of all, we start as fans, but then, now we analyze the game. We talk about basketball. This is what we do. And specifically we cover, we cover the entire league, but we focus specifically on this team, right? But the difference is I'm not going to come here acting like I know what Johnny Davis's rookie year is going to be like for the Washington Wizards, because I don't go out watching a thing on the Washington Wizards. But the difference is I'm willing to admit that Stephen A. Smith probably has a full breakdown in his head of what he thinks that roster is going to do, and he probably didn't even watch a single game from theirs last year. And that's the thing, man. That's where it has to come out. Is Stephen A. Smith is a guy that, he knows the game of basketball. He knows the landscape of the league. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to that regard. But again, if you're going to come out and say that a player like Cade Cunningham, which again, his nickname was Motorcade because of his motor, what are we doing here?
Misinterpretation. It sounds like it's a misinterpretation. It sounds like Stephen A. Smith looking at his game. Let's just say let's say best case scenario, Stephen A's watched Cade. He's watched the Pistons, and he sees Cade and how cool, calm, and collected he is. That's his takeaway from that, Sean. Basketball aside, he doesn't have a motor. And what a takeaway, honestly. I mean, give credit to Stephen A. What a great analyzation of Cade Cunningham. It's just
what a brilliant analysis, right?
He'll find out. He'll find out. Just keep watching him, Stephen A. You'll see.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you'll see soon enough, my friend. And again, if we just want to go down to like, if we just want to showcase like what that physical transformation was like, if we just want to like, just for the sake of posterity, I mean, there's Cade in rookie year, like decent physique, but like obviously this was something he needed to work on. He needed to grow in, right? Transform to now.
Yeah, he doesn't have a motor.
No, no motor at all. Nope, doesn't spend any time in the gym. Wasn't at numerous pro runs this offseason with superstars like Kyrie Irving, Trae Young, Scotty Barnes. No, he doesn't put in the work at all. But
Yeah.
with that, what are your thoughts on these comments from Stephen A. Smith, Mr. First
Keep
Take?
talking about the Knicks, Stephen A.
Wait, is the show called First Take because he only sticks to his first take on people and doesn't evolve his sports opinion? That's a whole other conversation for a whole different day. But what do you think?
Yeah,
Let
that's
us
a
know in
good
the
one.
comment section down below. Stephen A. Smith, get your together. But with that, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure you're following my guy Jeff on Twitter at JeffIFReady. Also, be sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday to catch him on the Morning Woodward Show. But also be sure you follow your boy down here at Sean Half Court. But that is going to do it today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.